El Paso, thanks for checking in with us today, Maspons MD. Today we're going to talk about some of the backstory behind Aldo Maspons, Maspons Pediatric Gastro, VemiDoc, the technology company that I helped co-found. I'm CEO of VemiDoc. It's an app that you can download on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And we think it's a way for you to have better outcomes when working closely with your physician and your insurance company here in town. Please feel free to drop some comments down below. Check us out we're on the podcast here that we're doing. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're trying to go live on Clubhouse. Eventually we'll get there, and we're also check out the website of VemiDoc.com, and if anything you want to learn about or you think that's would be valuable to you, please let us know in the comments. It's been a crazy year, obviously, for everyone, and I'm just reflecting about this time last year, about where we were at, and we have VemiDoc launched this COVID changed obviously all our lives, and it definitely changed life for VemiDoc. And around this time last year, we were connecting people with their patients, with their doctors through our app, doing telemedicine visits, keeping people seeing their doctor and keeping people as best we can and keeping them healthy. It's been a great year for a lot of different reasons, and a really tragic year for a lot of different reasons. But I think that in tragedy and suffering, there's always opportunity to get better and to grow, and that's just the thread of my life. I think we're like in the region, for us and my family, definitely we're fatalists. We definitely love to suffer, but it's all for good. It's nothing, like my abuelita says, que no hay un mal que por bien no venga. So I'm from El Paso, and when I was moving back, I was driving back home on my way, and I was thinking about the amount of work that was waiting for me. Thousands of patients. I'm a pediatric gastroenterologist, and I wanted to find out ways. I was trying to figure out ways I can see a lot of patients. So figuring out ways I can scale myself. And so there was just no feasible way for me to see thousands of kids at a time. And so I was thinking about that. I was thinking about my niece she's special needs. She has a lot of medical problems. I was thinking about a lot of kids that I would see in med school. So I went to med school in Dallas at UT Southwestern. I did my fellowship at Baylor and Houston at Texas Children's. And we saw a lot of kids from El Paso that would go over to El Paso or go to Houston to receive medical care. And I was thinking about the best ways to serve them. In El Paso, we're significantly underserved, definitely in the pediatric world and also in the adult world of medicine. And I think that people don't necessarily know how underserved we are if you don't have a lot of experience in the medical world, until you have to see a physician or until you need that specialty care. And that's when you realize just how underserved we are as a community. And it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to really grasp that severity at that moment, because at that moment it's probably too late. And so what you're faced with is having to leave El Paso, maybe stay in town. But we're just so underserved, and so that kind of got me thinking about technology, right? Because if you can scale, if you're able to get your food ordered now, right, like anywhere, you can be anywhere in town and get something delivered to you. This is obviously after COVID, but if you're getting better service from the restaurant industry than you are from your physician, then I think physicians are doing something wrong. And just kind of bringing that whole picture together in ways that we can better serve our community. I would often get back when I came back, why did you come back home? What was it about El Paso that brought you home? You could have been in any city, USA, and not struggled as much, probably gotten paid more, and be a lot more fulfilled than coming back home. And the truth is, I didn't have a single gray hair when I came back home, and probably like 2 months in is when I got all my grays. It's not for everybody. I think it was definitely a lot of infrastructure that needed to get put in place. A lot of background work, and I came back home because I was needed. My wife and I, we had opportunities to stay back in Houston. We had a lot of jobs for us there and the Bay Area and California, and everybody knows. People who know me well know how much I love being in California, being in the Bay, and the impact that I was going to have, whether it's in technology or whether it's as a physician, just wasn't going to be as strong starting off in those big cities than it would be being back home. Plus, my mom was here. That always helps. So, is there opportunity in El Paso, Texas? And I think it's not from a physician side, from a tech side. It's not for the weak. That's for sure. This is not a city where it's a plug and play kind of thing. Where if you're a physician and you just want to come in, and there's definitely a need for sure. There's a need for physicians here, but it's not the kind of city where you just come in and say, I want to work for an institution and start working right away. Which is different from most cities. So I have friends who are from El Paso. They're very well trained and they have different specialties, and they've been turned away from coming back home because the infrastructure is not there for them. And so whatever institution it is that tells them no, is it because that institution is not ready for them, or they just don't know how to utilize their skill set. And so when you're coming back to El Paso, for just like people who are not physicians to know about this side is like doctors. If you're in private practice, there's a lot of things that go into being in private practice. If you're in the tech space, medical tech space in El Paso, there's a lot of extra things that go into being in the medical tech space in El Paso. And there's just a lot of foundation that needs to be laid, and a lot of people like to bring it. I love sports, and to think about it as in the sports technology and sports reference is like you have. Do you want to be in the startup world where you're starting a team, kind of building it out, kind of like what UTEP's going through right now, right? With a new coach coming in, he has to essentially build a program back up from scratch. That's what El Paso's like, coming in, starting fresh, and build. I left the medical school to go into private practice for a number of different reasons, and one of them was I wanted to take care of patients the way I wanted to take care of patients, and in a way that I think it's important for patients to have options, and I think it's important for patients to connect with their doctors, and I think it makes for better outcomes. Not everybody is gonna click with my type of personality, and that's okay. I think that I offer a certain type of way, and I think that the patients that I see and the families that I see, 'cause I see us more as a team, and I really try to build on that. Like I'm part of the team that helps. My job is to help get your kid healthy, working as a team with the parents and your child. And I want people to see me that way as a teammate, not as somebody like an authority figure who's like, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do it my way, because that's not always the best way. Sometimes that's needed, like tough love, but that's not always the best way. From an entrepreneurial side, from a technology side, so when we started VemiDoc, so it's a mobile app. What we do as a company is we work to improve medical outcomes for underserved communities like El Paso. And the job for us is to work closely with physicians and the insurance providers to help physicians manage thousands of patients, right? So specifically about El Paso, we don't have that many doctors. We have a lot of people who need to see doctors, and we figuring out ways to help that one physician or group of physicians manage their patient panel, thousands of patients, so that patients feel connected to their doctors regularly. And when we pitched this idea, we started off in the mecca of entrepreneurial tech startups. We went to the Bay Area, and it was a total flop, I think, to say the least. I think we started this game about probably 4 years ago or so, and I think that the very first question that we got, so we met somebody from TechCrunch, and the very first question that we got was, who's the CEO? and we all looked at each other, and we didn't have that identified. And I think we all were passionate about the project, but there was definitely a lot more maturity that needed to come around as a team. And then once we kind of found out roles and expertise and levels of roles of expertise, that's kind of, I think, where things started kind of shaking out a little bit more. But it was a tough sell, I think, for people. Number one, outside, just stating that we're a tech company from El Paso, Texas. That was outside of El Paso. That was not a sexy thing. For sure. I think at that time, in 2021, I think now everybody in the United States probably knows about El Paso, Texas. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Some of them unfortunate because of the shooting, some of it because of Beto O'Rourke, and some of it, I think, because of our own work, and we're just kind of spreading the word. We definitely have a lot of pride being from EP, but it was some barriers before, and it's still some now. And then just being from El Paso alone was I think not sexy to a lot of people. Being a technology company not from El Paso was not sexy to a lot of people. And then being in a health space, and I think that at least when talking to investors, or there's different levels to this game. There's when we're trying to get funding, there's funding it for ourselves, which is how we did it. We bootstrapped it from within our own pool of money, friends and family, and then we went out. Now we're in the angel space where we get pre-seed funding, and so we'll have some announcements coming up pretty soon with locally, and then we also have we're engaged with talks from groups in Austin, which I think it's exciting for the city to know that we are, as an organization from VemiDoc, we're pushing forward. And if people who know me know that one of the things I really love most is to be in the bigger stage representing El Paso, kind of like what at the drive-in. If you guys know who At the Drive-In is, they'll always start off with Cedric saying, "Hey Jim, who are we?" And Jim says, "We're at the drive-in," and he'll say like, "Tell them where we're from." Like, "We're from El Paso, Texas," and they just start rocking out. That's what I want VemiDoc to be, and that's what I want Maspons Pediatric Gastro to be. Is I want everybody to know that I'm from El Paso. And so like I think that there's going to be definitely a lot of pride once the news starts coming in there about things that we're doing, and I really think that we have an opportunity as an organization to do something special, to really demonstrate new ways of practicing medicine. We have the opportunity to help physicians manage thousands of patients at a time in really unique ways. So creating cohorts of groups of patients depending on what their disease is, and then manage them along months at a time, sending them check-ins. So sets of questions that are like, hey, so for me, I'm a gastroenterologist. So specifically for people who have inflammatory bowel disease, are you having any bleed diarrhea? Are you having any belly pain? Are you waking up at night because of pain? How's your appetite? Are you gaining weight? Are you losing weight? If I'm able to check in with my patients regularly, the goal for me is to always try to keep my patients out of the hospital, improve their quality of life. And this is helping me do that. So economically, what kind of the struggles? What do they look like from the personal side, entrepreneurial side? I found great pride when I would interview, starting from medical school. I used to shop a lot at thrift stores, and mostly it was for necessity because I couldn't afford a lot of clothes. But I know I had to buy a suit for interviews, and I'm not sure how this was perceived at UCLA. So I interviewed at UCLA, and I knew I had an interview at UCLA coming up. So I went when I came back home to El Paso. I have a favorite thrift store that I would go to, and I bought a $10 suit, which was in my mind was super awesome. It was a great looking suit. It was if anybody saw the movie Fletch, it was like a custom made suit from a dead guy. That was basically me. It was an awesome suit. It was like this brown pinstripe. It was maybe a little pimpy, but when I got to the interview, at the end of the day, the director was like, "Man, by the way, that's a great looking suit." And I said, "Hey, you want to know how much I spent on this suit?" And he thought it was a very weird question. He's like, "I don't know, like $2,000, $10." And I opened it up and had another guy's name on the inside of the coat. And I don't know how he perceived it. But I didn't end up matching into UCLA for med school. Maybe it was a suit. I don't know. But those kind of stories kind of followed me along, and I think that it's not about the game is not about making money. I think the game is always about bringing value to people, whether it's relationships, whether it's building a medical practice, whether it's doing a startup. It's about how I can leave the world a better place. And as cliche as that might sound, but that's what I want my legacy to be, is like, Aldo Maspons came to the world, and we're better off because he helped in this little way, however that is. I think about my grandma, I think about my mom, I think about my tios and tias, and them being good people opened a lot of doors for me. And so I want to make sure that I'm able to open up those kinds of doors for other people too. The life growing up, I think, for my mom and my abuelitos, humble beginnings for sure. I think that so we grew up in Lower Valley, Juarez, Lower Valley, and then we moved to the east side. And my grandma, she's from Parral. She didn't have I think the highest schooling she had was 3rd grade, and my mom was a single mom. We have really strong Bay Area connections because my tia moved from Juarez to Oakland in the 60s, and my mom and my tios would move out and work there in the summers and then come back home to Juarez to continue to work. And I think that work ethic of just grinding and working so you can have better opportunities for your kids is something that's was instilled in us early on as kids. And I think that the story that I have, I think, is the immigrant story. I think it's a lot of reasons why people like from my mom's neighborhood or come back to El Paso is like they want to have their kids go to better schools and do better things and push as much as they can so they can improve. And that's, I tried to embody that. And I can remember many a times where, so I think one of the reasons why I love snacks, so people who know me know that I love snacking. And I think one of the reasons why I love snacking was because we didn't have a lot of snacks in the house. Growing up, we had very barren pantry, and it was fine. That's just the way it was, and so we kind of made do. But this is not a diss at all on my mom. It's more just kind of just working and being grateful for what we have, and it's never for me about the money, because money, I understand completely that money comes and goes. When I started private practice, we had nothing coming in, with $0 working for free for a few years, and it was the same thing with VemiDoc. We had all the money and time that I had was going back into the company, and now that we have some contracts and we have some funding from a great group of angels, things hopefully will start turning around from the impact that we can have, from impacting locally to then moving regionally and then statewide and then growing nationally. The goal for us is to really help people in Medicaid population specifically, and then growing out beyond that, who are underserved, have the best medical outcomes. When I was in med school, when I was in residency, so I went to med school in Dallas at the county hospital there at Parkland, and then in Albuquerque I did my residency at UNM. And what I saw, I was a part of really big county networks, and I just saw massive amounts of patients who needed medical care. They would get it from, a lot of them would get it from the county system, which is not necessarily a sustainable model. They would go to the ERs, and there was definitely a lot of ER visits that could have been preventable. But that all goes back to the network and the infrastructure that's in place for people on Medicaid. And those are the kind of people I love working with. When I was growing up, I didn't know, I guess I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I remember specifically passing by El Paso Community College and the Valle Verde campus, and there was some apartments that popped up. And I remember thinking, man, when I grow up, I want to go live in those apartments and go to that school. And that was like big time for me. And then I started learning a little bit more. I'm like, well, maybe I can do a little bit more, and maybe I get there, and maybe I can do more, and maybe I can do more. And I remember in high school, I always wanted to be a doctor, and I didn't know how. But I remember thinking about college, and I remember that thinking that there was only a few things that I could do as far as I understood what college to be representative, because this is pre-internet, obviously. I could be a teacher, go to college, be a teacher. I could be a college to go to do business administration, a lawyer, or a doctor. Those are basically the four careers that I thought college offered me. And then when I got to college, I got to college at Santa Clara knowing that I wanted to be a doctor. And then I realized that I was, number one of the only people whose family didn't go to college. And so that was a crazy experience for me. Also, I remember going on a tour and knowing that I was one of the only, we were doing the campus tour when we were starting the orientation. And the person leading the tour was like, okay, that's the financial aid office. Who here is on financial aid? And it was like 50 people. And I was the only one that raised my hand. And then I realized, well, I guess I'm the only poor one. It was a wild observation. And so then, essentially what I'm getting at is that, like, throwing myself into very uncomfortable situations is the way I learn best. And it's been, I realize now that's my DNA, is being as most uncomfortable as I can be. And I might fail, and that's fine. But I got better because I just failed and I learned. And I remember going back to Cathedral, having that very lesson. I went back 2 years in. I took a calculus class or a physics class, and I remember having the third lowest grade in that class. and the guy wrote the scores on the board. And this is, I'm a good physician, okay, I promise. But the professor wrote the list of all the grades. And I just kept looking at my number, and I'm like, man, how low is this guy gonna go? And I got a 29 on that test. And I think the lowest was like a 19 or something, or 10 or something. But I think a lot of people probably would have gotten discouraged to be like, man, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And I realized at that moment, I'm like, well, I already know what I want to do, so I got to figure out a way to get there. And that's how I think this whole like ingredient list for this bootstrapping stuff kind of came about. Everything becomes like a dish for me, where it's a dish made up of a lot of different experiences, and it's just this. And I can pick out different flavors, I guess, from that dish at different moments in time that kind of inform the dish. And there's a lot of experiences and memories that I'll draw from to keep it going. And essentially, it's the same thing is improve and achieve. And I think like from an economic perspective, like poverty perspective, those were rough times. They informed me a lot. I mean, just I went to Juarez just last week, and I remember when we were kids, being on the bridge, and we would pray that the car wouldn't stop, wouldn't stall out on the bridge, because that happened to us a lot, where the car would just die, and then we would have to like push the car over the bridge. And I remember thinking, like, when I grow up, I want to have a car that works, and I want to have a car that has air conditioning, because man, it was rough when you're on the bridge without air conditioning. So people from Juarez El Paso know that one really well, because I think that was, in my mind, that's when you made it. When you had a car that you can roll up the windows and have air conditioning, oh man, it's the best. But I think the one dicho de my abuelita would say that always gets me through in those uncomfortable situations, because it is something that I really look to be in, as long as it's gonna make me better. Right? I'm not trying to be in uncomfortable situations just to be in a comfortable situation. She would say like, un buen gallo en cualquier periquera canta, and I would use that to be like, I can do it, porque yo soy un buen gallo. A good rooster can sing anywhere. It doesn't matter where the rooster is. And so that's what I'm trying to be. And I think that as a city, for El Paso, I think we oftentimes get categorized as being complacent and not pushing hard enough. And I always want people to know, for me at least, that I'm pushing. I don't want to be complacent, and I want to make sure my patients are aware of that too. Is that I'm definitely the kind of doctor that knows my limits, and I'm not trying to be the doctor that's like the know-it-all. But I will definitely be honest with you and say that I've met my limits, and I'm going to refer you out to a higher level of care. From a technology side, this is why I'm pushing, is because I think that there's nothing magic that's going to happen in El Paso that all of a sudden we know that we're underserved, and there's nothing magic that is going to all of a sudden just change that fact. All the money in the world can't attract all the physicians. I mean, if you're at least definitely in the pediatric specialty space, you're going to realize that we lost a lot of those specialists, because they come here and they see that it's not for them for whatever reason. It might not necessarily be a money thing. It's whatever it is, right? It might be a cultural thing. It might be just a goodness of fit thing. But they leave, and I'm pushing. I'm not being complacent, and I'm pushing to figure out using technology is to figure out, bridge that divide, and bring us together to improve outcomes for the citizens of the people of the region that need it. And I'm Aldo Maspons, CEO and co-founder of VemiDoc. I'm going to keep telling you, informing you about this trajectory that we're on. I think it's going to be a good story. It's exciting, and I'm happy to share it with everyone, because I hope that everyone can take a little bit of learning from it, and that we're all better because we're all working together to improve our region. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more awesomeness, hopefully.